All right, today's video will probably be considered a rant video. I have a lot of stuff that I want to get off my chest, but I'll have edits in the video. I'll have timestamps listed below. I'll have all that good stuff for those of you that want to skip around, because I know the internet has a short attention span, me included, but there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about that I think is important to talk about, and I recommend you stay throughout the entirety of the video because you might miss some important points. So there are a lot of changes that are going to be coming to World of Warcraft PvP Shadowlands, the arena meta, the PvP meta in particular. The first thing we're going to talk about in this video, and I think this is a great way to start the video, is the rogue changes. So recently we saw some nerfs to rogues, some pretty, I would say, large nerfs to rogues, specifically Kyrian rogues, but also the subtlety rogue spec as a whole, nerfing Shadow Blades, nerfing the Kyrian Covenant Conduit, echoing Reprimand itself by 50%. And I made a video last week talking about this because I wanted players to understand that the more you complain about something, the louder you are about it, the more likely you are to see changes. And there were so many people on that video, it was received well, but so many people on that video that were complaining about just nerf rogues, man, and everything will be fine. I get what you're saying, Stoops, that you don't want to see massive nerfs to classes and you want to see buffs to the underperforming specs to make the game fun for everybody, but just nerf rogues and the game will be fine. Well, we saw some rogue nerfs, and the nerfs were pretty large in my opinion. Now, what's frustrating about those nerfs is that they were way too large in my opinion. Whether they were justified or not, they were not taken in the approach that a lot of players, including myself, advise Blizzard, right? We want to see small nerfs on a frequent basis to find a good balanced meta, a happy medium. And Ian recently came out on an interview with Sloot, and he said that they don't want to do too drastic of nerfs. Essentially what he said, they don't want to do too drastic of nerfs because they don't want to swing the pendulum too far back the other direction like it was in BFA. They know the community likes the snappier gameplay, the faster paced gameplay. These are his words. And they don't want to swing it too far back the other way. And then within an hour or so, they released nerfs that were like 50% nerfs. And for the player that's playing the sub-rogue, no matter if it's justified or not, it still doesn't feel good. Getting your class nerfed by 50% doesn't feel good. It just doesn't. But if you were to nerf it by 10% and then say what your intentions are with the nerf, it's going to feel a lot better. If you nerf something by 10%, the community will then say, well, does Blizzard even play this game? Are they even in touch with the community? 10%, that's all you're going to do. What's going on? It needs a much larger nerf. But if you clarify within your blue post saying, well, right now, we are trying to find a point for rogues. We know that they are too front-loaded in their damage. We know that they have too much burst with the amount of control, but we don't want to over-nerf them, so we're doing small increments to find a place that is acceptable for all players, including subtlety rogue players. Now, it's not like Blizzard can't do this because they do it with Torghast. If you look at their Torghast blue post nerfs, recently they buffed Torghast, players were complaining it was too difficult, and then they nerfed it. And now they've nerfed it to a point where it's really easy to do. And honestly, personally, my opinion, I prefer it that way. I don't play Shadowlands to do Torghast. I do Torghast to get my Soul Ash, to get my legendaries, so I can do the things that I personally enjoy in the game, which is PvP, dungeons, and raids. That's what I do the game for. It's been that way for me for a long time. Not for everyone, but that's how I play the game. However, players complained so much that they made the changes, and then in their blue post they talked about what their goals are for these changes, what they're looking to do with these, and they specified. So for some reason they specify what their plans are for Torghast, but then you don't specify what your plans are really when it comes to nerfing someone's class when they've devoted hundreds of hours to that class, they've geared it up, they got their legendaries, they got their stuff, and you don't really give explanation behind your changes, which again, just doesn't feel good. Now, recently Pikaboo put out a Twitter post, which I agreed with a lot of what he said on his Twitter post. I love that he said that he was worried about that same sub-rogue treatment happening to other classes, making the game boring. And I love what he had to say about sub-rogues in regards to the fact that they're difficult to balance. A lot of classes fall into this territory. I think Mistweaver is one of them, believe it or not, because it has so much healing throughput that it's either way too high and then it's actually good, or it's not enough and it doesn't have the utility, so it's pretty bad. Ret falls under that same category in my opinion. It's difficult to balance those classes, and those classes definitely need to see some type of rework, I think, at some point. Only thing that I did disagree with what he said was saying that the class is unplayable and destroyed before testing the changes. So that is a common theme with the WoW community. It's not only the developers that, you know, do things that I think is problematic for the game. I think also the community. It's not targeting him. I'm just using this as an example. If you haven't tested something, for me, it's hard to say that something will be unplayable or destroyed. And what is that going to do? It's going to rile up the community and everyone's going to get really upset. And I'm not taking this Taliesin approach that you have to be careful of what you say. People come into my chat and would say, Sub Rogue is dead, Sub Rogue is dead. But in fact, if you look at the ladder, Pikaboo's #1 on the ladder currently. And then also, he may be #2 at this point. And then also you have Waz and a couple other rogues that were playing games post-nerf. Now, I'm not naive to the fact that something can be #1 or #2 on the ladder and that it's the best class in the game. Of course not. There are other classes that are probably way more well-rounded and they just happen to be very good at their class. But I would say that something can't be unplayable or destroyed if you're able to do well on it. A great example of a class that I would highly doubt anyone can get anywhere near the top 10 on the ladder is the Fury Warrior spec. I doubt if you give it to Joe Fernandez, Magnus, or anyone else, let's see them. It's a challenge, a personal challenge. I doubt they want to do it because it's a waste of their time. But I don't think anyone could play Fury Warrior currently and get to that point on the ladder, right? So Sub Rogue is not dead. It's just nowhere near as strong as it was. And it would not feel good to play as Sub Rogue and see your class get nerfed by 50%. But if you're doing these small incremental nerfs like you see with the Marksmanship Hunter, it feels okay. It's not that bad, right? Getting your class nerfed by 5%, and you repeatedly nerf by 5% till you find a point where it feels balanced, feels a lot better than just waking up one morning and seeing your class has been, nerfed by an absurd number. So for me, it's not only, it's that same notion of players complaining so much, the overreaction about changes that got rogues nerfed in the first place, right? Rogues, in my opinion, were not the most insane class. I did not think sub-rogues were the most broken class in the ladder. People copy paste what they hear in other chats. They go on the forums. They see this clip of somebody playing triple rogue 3s, and it has to be the best class in the game. But I would argue that there's so many better classes, or classes at least equal or were equal to subtlety rogues, that they were not the only class that needed to be changed, despite players saying that if you just nerf sub-rogue, everything's going to be fine. Well, guess what? Now players are pointing out, well, what about warriors? What about rets? What about windwalkers? What about shadow priests? Have you seen Balance Druids now? It will never end. There are always classes that you're going to point out that need to get nerfed, because once you nerf something else is going to stand out, which is why I do not like the nerf mentality. It just doesn't work. It's not fun for anybody. It makes people quit the game. They get disappointed in their class choice, and nobody should play the game with the fear of their class being gutted. It just doesn't feel good. And on the topic of sub-rogues, if the damage was too front-loaded or you didn't like how much burst it had, why don't you add to their consistent damage? Why don't you give them something else to make up for the fact that you're going to nerf their class by X%? There are ways to do changes that feel good, not just nerfs. And more importantly, I think Blizzard needs to do a much better job at clarifying their intention with these changes. I like what Ian had to say. Why wasn't what Ian had to say in the Blue Post notes? Is everyone going to watch that interview? No. Is everyone going to look at the nerfs? Yes. It takes two sentences to say that if it goes too far, we will revert the changes. We're trying to find a happy medium. Why can't you write that? I'll write it for free. I'll literally do it for free. I can write it on a notepad. You don't have to pay me. I'll do it for free. And that would ease so much of the player tension regarding class changes. You also have players blaming the casual player base, saying, oh, it's all of these 1,400 players that don't know how to play their class, and that's why these changes are happening. Well, changes most certainly do happen when players complain too much, right? It's just how it works, right? There are a lot of people online that I see complaining about something that are experienced players. And they're saying things that, in my opinion, just aren't really true, or they don't even know what they're complaining about. A great example is I stumbled upon a Twitter post the other day, and in that Twitter post, they said that the 3 things that need to be nerfed defensively to make the game better are, and they mentioned Word of Glory, but they didn't mention all the other things that are also really strong, like Enhancement Shaman off healing, or Feral Druid off healing. They didn't mention any of those. They only specifically targeted Word of Glory. But we can also talk about some of the other classes that they mentioned. They also mentioned Intervene. Okay, I do agree, even though I'm playing a warrior, that Intervene is very strong. But you're compiling changes. You're not only saying that Intervene should only now reflect or intervene one physical ability, you're also saying now that it should be an increased CD and the duration should be shorter. So you're adding 3 nerfs to one specific ability. Not just one like we should have seen with sub-rogues. A great chain with sub-rogue would have been maybe nerfing Echoing Reprimand by 20%, 10%, and then seeing how that feels, and then a few days later adding on to it if necessary. So you're adding 3 nerfs to kind of destroy the ability. That's typical Blizzard balancing. Let's also look at his change to Ignore Pain. He's saying Ignore Pain has a flat damage reduction, which is not how Ignore Pain works. And I tweeted out saying, hey, it's kind of strange that you add Ignore Pain to this list because what you're saying about the ability isn't really true. And I think it's not as powerful as you make it out to be, like Feint, for example, where it's a flat damage reduction. He went ahead and deleted the tweet. And then Blizzo commented and said, imagine thinking, Ignore Pain is a flat damage reduction, etc. And then he commented underneath that and said, I don't really know how the ability works, but it seems too strong. If you don't know how the ability works, how can you complain about it? How can you complain about something that you don't even know how it works? That is just in my mind, that is literally the like summation of the problem in our community. That is it. That's the crux of it all, is that people complain about things that they don't even know about. It just doesn't make sense, man. And it's not just the casual player base. That's my point with this all. It's everybody. It's me sometimes too, but we all need to be wiser about what we're saying, because what we say, whether you believe it or not, it does matter. It's the loud majority. And if everyone's on the page to get Sub-Rogue nerfed, that's why Sub-Rogue got nerfed. That's why they targeted Sub-Rogues in particular, and not all of the other classes that were overperforming. They targeted Sub-Rogues because everyone complained about Sub-Rogues. And now it's going to be the next class come Tuesday, and the next class come Tuesday. And it's not a doomsday video. This is to show you guys that we need to be smarter about what we are asking for. So rather than pointing out all these other classes because your rogue experience is now bad in Arena, why don't we just say, hey, can we get some type of revision on the sub-rogue changes? If they were bad, hypothetically, let's fix that. Let's call for changes to buff the underperforming classes if they are underperforming. Now, there are cases though where Blizzard makes changes when nobody asked for them. And the best change, for example, or the best example of that is the dampening change to 2v2 Arena. Nobody asked for a dampening change to 2v2 Arena. Part of the reason why a lot of people, and it was something that we mentioned on the Allcraft episode with Benruki, is one of the reasons why I love 2v2 Arena is that dampening starts right away at 20%. So the games are much quicker. Now they did this dampening change to address burst damage. The dampening change does nothing but slow down the game, which is the exact opposite of what they said during the interview, is that they know players like a quicker, more fast-paced gameplay, snappier gameplay, so they don't want to swing the pendulum back in that direction. Well, by making dampening now start at 0 in 2v2 and then building from there rather than at 20%, games just take infinitely longer. They take so much longer that I don't even enjoy doing 2v2 Arena. 3v3 is great. I love 3v3. I actually love RBGs as well. I'm doing a lot of them. Don't like 2v2 since the dampening change. Loved it before. Now it's all about mana, and I'm queuing into tons of resto druids that just play thorns, and they don't do anything but look for drinks, and the games take, I don't know, 10, 15, it takes forever for the game to end. If something's not good, like we saw with the Torghast change, revert it. No one's gonna blame you if you're transparent about stuff. We need to be more open about stuff, and I honestly mean it. I will work for free. I love this game. I'll do it for free. I'll write stuff up. I'll explain, whatever. It's just going to be a chain reaction. I'm calling it now. So there'll be changes coming Tuesday. This video is not going to change anything. All this video can do is try to inform people about what they're asking for. When stuff happens on Tuesday, let's talk about it with an open mind. And honestly, I just wanted to get this off my chest. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you share the same sentiment as I do. If you don't, that's completely fine. It's just my opinion. I'll see you all in the next one.